Your journey here from Seattle, from the Renton area to Texas, and we can dive a little bit deeper on the differences and what you're seeing with regards to the to at least the Filipino community, because that's really what we can truly speak on.
Yeah.
But tell me about yourself, like your parents, like family, just the diaspora, right? From Philippines to wherever else in the world. Your family, on both sides. How was that like in the PI? What were they? Like what were your parents in the PI before they even came here?
Uh, well, my mom was a nurse in the Philippines, obviously. My dad graduated with political science,
Okay.
but my on my mom's side there were a bunch of farmers, and on my dad's side, his mom, so my grandma, actually ran a palisdaan, and that is
Mm,
a fish pond. So they had about 9 brothers and sisters. She was the entrepreneur of the group. And I remember when I was young, she would come, back and forth to from the Philippines. And you remember those video games, those tiger games that you would get like at Kmart,
yeah, the
where
little tiny ones.
yeah, the
Yeah.
little handheld ones, and there's only like one game, and there's only one scene, right?
And you can
It's,
see the outlines of them also as to
yeah,
where,
you can see the
yeah,
outline. But
of the pixelations.
she would buy those toys, but not for us. And
Mm,
she was like, "Yeah, no, no, these are for the kids that helped me at the Palisdaan."
mhm,
And she's like, "They're your cousins." I'm like, "Okay." The first time I really like met them, knowing them, was when I was 14. When I went to the Philippines when I was 14, and she's like, "Yeah, these are your cousins. They're the ones that helped out the fish pond." But she was really strict. Um, I remember she was like, when I had a Laos girlfriend, but she was like, that's not the only. And I was like in 8th grade. That's not the only girl that you're going to date.
I didn't know that. You got the little Alpino thing going on too back then.
Yeah, it was like pretty much whole high school.
Wow, okay.
So, um, but she's like, collect, and then select.
Mm,
And she's like, don't be, just. But she was really strict, and I didn't realize why she was really strict. When I went to the Philippines and I saw she was like all over town, like everywhere, and I didn't realize what she was doing at 14 years old until I got older. She was handling business.
mhm, mhm,
Right, she had a bunch of employees, like all her like a lot of her family were pretty much her employees, and they were telling me stories that while everybody was getting drunk, she was out there selling the fishes at the Ely, aka down, like, the town where
yeah,
all the palenques are, right? So she had the desire to put her kids to school. So all her kids went to school for either like dentistry, nursing, political science, engineering, and they all her kids were able to come to America. Only pretty much the only one out of all her brothers and sisters where they all got to go to America. On my
mm,
mom's side, they were farmers, but luckily her oldest brother went to the Navy, the US Navy. So he was able to petition my grandma and grandpa, and then they were able to get all their siblings on my mom's side. There's only one cousin of mine from that lineage that didn't
mhm,
get to come because she was too old and she got married. But all her siblings were able to come to America, so she hasn't even stepped foot in America yet.
mm. She have a
Um,
desire? 'Cause some
yes,
don't.
yeah, no, she has a desire,
Okay.
but she can't come.
Mm,
I don't know why they can't. Her mom, can't petition her.
mhm,
Um, so I got blessed that all my cousins on my dad's side, like the first cousins, are here, and all my first cousins on my mom's side, but her, are
yeah.
in America. But my dad's side, they all went to Chicago. My mom's side are all in Seattle.
Okay.
So then when my mom came here, she was actually pregnant with me. and so I was born here. So my two oldest brothers were born in the Philippines. I was born here, and then my youngest sister was born here.
Yeah. Technically, you're still first gen.
Yep, I'm still first
Technically.
gen.
Yeah.
And but she tried to be a nurse over here, but she had a sickness where she couldn't be a nurse because of all the stress, and she
Mm.
didn't just work like all those overtime for someone else telling her what to do. But it's funny because she ended up becoming a farmer, so she sold flowers at the Pike Place Market because that's what
Oh,
my grandma did,
wow.
and that's what my grandma's family did. So she was an entrepreneur or a business person by by not by choice, but it is what it like.
It's an
That's what she felt.
an
Yeah,
inheritage like trait that
yeah,
she
like she
was.
fell into it, right? Because it's like it was either nursing or go get another 9 to 5, and she's like, "No,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna go work with my mom." So my grandma, so they actually my grandma started like all those flowers that you see at Pike Place Market. My grandma's actually the one that started doing that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay.
before,
History lesson.
yeah, so before that, her my not my grandma, but my grandpa's uncles, they were all selling vegetables. So a lot of the farmers at the Pike Place Market were selling vegetables. But then my grandma was like, you know what? These tourists, like, there's still people over there that sell fruits and vegetables. She's like, these tourists aren't buying fruits and vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
So she started selling flowers in the 80s. And then from there, everybody else started selling flowers.
Mm-hmm.
The Laos, the Cambodians, the Chinese, the Vietnamese, the Hmongs, the other Filipinos, they started to catch on. They're like, oh, wait a minute, we gotta we gotta sell flowers too. I remember I was like 6 years old, and I would count a lot of money in one day, $500 to $1,000 in a
Yeah.
day from them selling flowers.
I mean, back then that was loot.
That was a lot. So
Yeah.
uh so my mom got here what, like 1983, 1984, because I was
Okay.
born 84.
I'm gonna take some notes here.
1987, I think, they, or maybe like 85, like a year 2 years later, they got, her and her brothers got their first house. And then 1987, they got the second house, and they were doing it through seller finance, so they weren't getting loans from the bank. The
Mm-hmm.
houses were cheap enough, they're like 50,000,
Mm-hmm.
50, 70,000, that the sellers were like, okay, I'll carry the note and you guys just pay me.
Mm-hmm.
Until later on in the 90s, they refied and paid off the seller,
Okay.
right?
Real quick, during this time, so we're talking about mom right now and
Yeah.
mom's side of family. So where was dad?
So my mom went back to the Philippines in 1987 and married my dad. So she couldn't get married, otherwise she would have not been able to come to America.
So they were still dating, but there was nothing official at that point.
Yeah, so they had two
Okay.
kids and one on the way,
Interesting.
me. Um, so then when she gets back, she goes and marries my dad, 1987. He comes there in 1990 when I was in kindergarten. Um,
Okay. So there's a lot of lost time there. There
yeah.
was, there's lost time there with, with dad. Um,
Well, I did go back to the Philippines like when I was like 3 years old
mhm.
for a year. So my oldest brother came with my mom to America, and the second oldest, Joe, he stayed in the Philippines with my dad. So each of them had a kid. And
Okay.
then when I got a little bit older, we switched. Then I went to the Philippines and he came to America
Okay.
after they got married. Yeah, like in that time period. And then 87, my sister is born. So after, she goes and gets married in the Philippines and then comes back 9 months later. She gives birth to my sister. So there's four of us.
Wow.
And then my dad comes, in 1990.
In
And
90. Yeah.
yep, and it's a culture shock for him. One
Of
thing with,
course.
you know, um,
And you said he was military or he was
no,
also
no,
farm
he was political science.
poli sci. Okay.
Yeah.
Decorated. Just, he had a pretty good career already in there in the PI.
No, no, no. That's what he
No.
graduated college, but he knew all
Oh,
the
okay.
politicians in the area.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and then, but you know what's interesting
Mhm.
is I remember my aunts would always balot us, right?
Mhm. Your
Like
aunt?
spank us. Yeah, my
Mhm.
mom's sisters, because we grew up with my mom's family, because everybody, all my dad's family was in Chicago and the Philippines still, and they would spank us and say, you guys are bad kids. But you know what my mom would always say to us? You're not bad kids. You're
Mhm.
good kids. So my mom ingrained that in us, that you're not bad
Mhm.
kids, you're good kids. And I was probably like 4 or 5 years old when my mom would always say that,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? You know what they say about the zodiac signs? There's this thing that's going on, and I wouldn't say it's not true or if it is true, but I'd consider it. They say that when you say, "Oh, I'm a Taurus, I'm a Aries, I'm a Pisces," they're
Mhm.
saying that you're attaching yourself to a demonic spirit. Like they're saying that each zodiac sign is a demonic spirit, and every
Mhm.
time you claim that, you're giving uh you're giving those demonic spirits a doorway for
Mhm.
you to be attached, for them to attach to you.
Hmm. Interesting.
And
Really just
what's
vulnerability to that power, like, to that
yeah,
to
to that spirit,
self-succumbing to that, yeah.
right? And then when you think about it, they have different traits. They say, "Oh yeah, I was reading the horoscope, or I was reading this, and they're saying that this is how Pisces or a Sagittarius is. Man, they're so on point, right?" Um,
But then you're also creating yourself around that, "I'm supposed to be like this."
yeah, I'm
You know, "Hey,
supposed to be like
Cancers
this.
are supposed to be good lovers," or, like,
Yep.
or, like, just the negativity, we have bad tempers, and then
Yeah.
before you know, it's like, "You know what? It's fine that I shouldn't work on my temper because I'm supposed to be like that." But at the same time,
Exactly.
so I could see credence in that.
Right.
I mean, I'm like, who are we to say what's real and what isn't supposed to be real? Just because life itself is so damn complicated. But carry on. Go ahead.
Yeah, but if you let's just say that there's no demonic spirit that's attached to it,
Hmm. Hmm.
but you read it and you say, "That's me." Now you're conforming to it
Hmm.
because you're believing in it.
Yeah.
And so the way that her toxic traits as a parent was
Hmm.
feeding that into him,
Yeah.
his mind started to believe it.
Yeah. Where there's already mental instability to begin with, and
Yeah.
it's already at a fragile rate.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, like especially in our culture, back at home, there's really not a lot of treatment or just feelings to actually treat that. It's more like the simplicity of, yeah, he's just probably lazy, or he's just probably bobo, dumb. He's naturally that. But once you get over here, there's a lot more studies, there's a lot more complication with medicine and understanding. Then then you start taking that next level of understanding why really is he even like that. I mean, it's also, there's a lot of common sense as to why, if you're preemie, there you haven't developed fully, as far as just your brain hasn't fully developed in that manner, and there was just really no recognition of that. And it's I don't want to make any reasons around that or excuses around that,
They
but
don't
there
know.
is, yeah, the ignorance is
Yep.
is you know ignorance in that particular space. It's real, and it's very unfortunate, right?
Hmm.
So now you're okay. So let's take a step back. I want to find out. So again, the episode or this conversation around this thing is really um just I don't want to say Asian, again, it's AAPI and AAP Heritage Month, and also like Mental Health Awareness Month. There's been a lot of social media postings, and a lot of stuff that's out there with regards to Asian parent toxicity. Something that I was interested in what you were saying is that dad came. So
I
you
was
came
born
here
here.
in '84. I mean, you were born here.
Yeah.
You're born '84.
Yeah.
You're a baby. So '84. And then your dad got here in '90, so you're 6 years old. How was so you were still young enough to where you really didn't form too much of a loss, or am I not am I wrong in that? because you've been
Um,
back and forth, right? You were back and forth.
just
You saw him
once.
once in a while. Yeah.
So yeah, but then when I came or when he came here, I knew who he was.
Mhm.
Yeah, my mind was able to uh, understand, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But then we grew up with my mom's youngest brother. So
Mhm.
when he came here, he was 17,
Mhm.
and he's pretty much the father figure and the one that raised us until my dad got here.
Okay. Is there any but you understood. You understood that, that void was eventually, as a child, but
Gonna
then
be filled.
you knew it was going to be filled, and by the time he was here, he stepped in. But you also said that he had this culture shock
Yeah.
with regard. So explain that. Like what do you mean by that?
Well, you know what a lot of here's what a lot of Filipinos do, right? Is when they come here, they think that they could just do anything, get anything,
Yeah.
be anything, right? That's why, like, when you go to the Philippines, they're asking for money because they think you're rich
Hmm.
in America.
Yeah.
But when he came here, he realized, like, oh shoot, that's not the way that it is.
Hmm. Hmm.
And over there, like, he just got drunk with his cousins, right? That's just the culture. You don't
It
work,
is.
you get drunk, right? You do
They're in
whatever.
province, more
Yeah,
provincial, or
yeah,
big city.
both, right?
Okay.
Well, people go to the big city because they find opportunities and jobs,
Yeah.
or they go out of the country.
Hmm.
And so when he came here, that's not the way it is, and you actually got to work really
No,
hard.
brother.
Right? You got to actually work really hard.
Hmm.
So he started working the farm, and I
Okay.
remember in third grade or like second grade, they're like, "Hey, we're gonna go to Chicago." So in third grade, we ended up living in Chicago for about a year. We went to the whole school year over there,
Hmm.
and he was working at Sheraton Hotel as a bellboy, right? But at that time, I'm like, oh man, he works at this big building
Hmm.
because it's like,
He made
so
it.
yeah. So we thought he was like, hot stuff, right? Like that is
Uh-huh.
so cool. And then they bought a Geo Prism, those Geo Prisms.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
look like the Toyota Corollas. So we're like, oh yeah, we got a new car, right? It's all like a cheap $10,000 car.
But back then it was big, just
Yeah.
accomplishment and ownership, right?
And then uh but while he was working there, he was always looking for jobs.
Mhm.
And then he ended up taking a CDL license.
Mhm.
And then we get back to Washington, and like the next year, and he becomes a truck driver.
Mhm.
He started working for waste management, garbage man in
Mhm.
Seattle. But while he was doing that, what when he got off and on his days off, he was working at the farm with my mom and at Pike Place Market.
Okay.
So he pretty much had like two jobs.
So I'm listening to that, and I'm basically comparing it to just my journey in the US. My question during that time is, so you were at this point, like, he got here at 6. I'm sure it was a mad rush to really make something happen for himself, and I'm sure, with that type of work ethic, you get a kick in the butt instead of this has happened. So within the next 2 years, I'm sure he was grinding with your mom's support. So you're around 8. So I'm really just applying this next to your journey thus far, applying this next to what I went through as far as the home. um, how was it at home as far as when you were, because you would go to school,
Hmm.
you would, do your daily, you would come home, and my assumption is this, correct me if I'm wrong, that there wasn't anyone home because moms, they're in the farms, they're just doing what they feel like that they're doing, working their butts off to put something on a plate and place you in a better situation. How was their presence during that time?
Well, it was actually my dad that was always gone. He was the one
Hmm.
working overtime. Remember how
Yeah.
I said that my mom was sick?
Yeah.
But when we went to Chicago, she became an LPN, even though she was a registered nurse in the Philippines. She was an LPN and she was working as a nurse. Um, that's the reason why we went over there, because when she was working here at the farm, yes, we saw a lot of money coming in, but my mom would send that money to the Philippines to provide
Mm,
for, her siblings before they came here, right? And then they use some of that money for the house. And so my dad was like, you know what? I don't really like how this is working out, where she's
mm-hmm.
working at the farm, but she's not even seeing any money. So we didn't really grow up with toys,
Yeah.
right? Like when my
Yeah.
cousins came in from the Philippines, their you know mom had jobs, their own jobs. They didn't work at the farm, so whatever money that they made, they got to keep, and they would go to the Philippines like every single year. And I'm like, man, how come
Jeez.
we don't go to the Philippines every single year?
Mm-hmm.
And they would always have toys, right? And I'm like, how come they always have toys? Like, how come we don't have toys? Um, but I didn't know that about my mom, that she whatever she made, she would just give it back. I think in a way that's a toxic trait,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
right?
Inherent obligation
Because it's a toxic, on both ends. Because
with
that's what
regards
a
to
lot
your
of
mom sending back and
yep,
the expectation from back home that you're supposed to be doing this.
that you're supposed to be doing this, right?
Yeah.
And I think to myself, if she, because they bought a house in like what 85 and then 87, and I'm like, imagine if they just kept doing that, and they just kept buying real estate in the 80s and the 90s, where then they stopped,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? They're like, okay, and then all the families, like we had three families in one house. We had about like 20 people in one house before, and our room was like a little tiny room in the attic, built in the night, like the house was built in like the 50s. So it's not like today where it's two-story house and you have the high ceilings. It was one of those where if you stood up straight, your head is hitting
Mm.
hitting the ceiling.
Jeez.
Like
Yeah.
they could have hit an Anne Frank up there.
And this was still in Seattle
This
or
was in
Washington.
Seattle.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And then so yeah, we go to Chicago for a year, we come back, and my mom doesn't really, work as much as she does because of her illness,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Um
How real quickly, how of course with mom, mom being just really the matriarch of that particular space of yours and just like your upbringing, was there some sort of a like and how she worked her butt off just to provide, not within her area in her space with you guys, but to more back home of just with, I think they call it what, utang loob. um Basically for you guys, was there any, did you feel a certain way about like, hey, look at our lifestyle, you're sitting here, you're ill, how come you can't take care of us and, and yourself, why are you putting yourself through these? Because that's just me from the outside hearing what you're thinking, and I would probably generate something like that within myself. Was there ever anything like that from you, or did you have full understanding?
oh no, I knew. Like when she took all the pills, like she took like
Hmm.
17 different pills a day,
Jeez. Jeez.
like pharmaceutical, and she was always going to the doctors. And I remember they were saying that like she was like bleeding, you know,
Internally, and yeah.
yeah, or like down there,
Yeah.
right? It wasn't like the period type of bleeding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because I remember we'd have to go to the hospital, and then my dad was like, "Yeah, your mom has to do like a check."
Hmm.
And then, but she would work the farm. She worked the farm a lot, but it was on her own time. So
Hmm.
the times where we needed money, she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go work, then sell some flowers at the farm." Right. Um, but
Was there any anger at all? And you looking at her, or not even anger, just like frustration in her. It's like, you are sitting here working yourself down to the, to the root just to send money out rather than take care of yourself.
well, no, she stopped sending money when they ended up buying their own small house.
When they finally um, migrated to the US,
Yeah,
immigrated to
so
the
when
US. Okay.
all her sisters and stuff started coming here, and when we all lived in one house, then they started to, save money for themselves because they knew that they had to leave because there was like three families in one little
Yeah.
house, and
Mm.
it was getting crowded, and we all shared one bathroom. So imagine there's like four of us kids. There's three of my cousin's kids. Right now, there's five of them, and then there was two of the other cousins. Now there's four of them. Right, and then the aunts, the uncles, the grandma, and the grandpa. So I remember like when we
Yeah.
get ready for school, like everybody'd have to take turns, and there'd be like 10 of us
One.
sleeping in the living room,
Yes, sir.
right? Like what is that thing? The uplag, the bit the
The
thing that you
banig.
the banig.
Banig, yeah.
The
So for all those that aren't Filipino, the banig is basically just it's a it's a plastic woven mat,
it's like
and
what you
everybody
use for
just
picnics, like a blanket, like a
yeah,
woven,
yeah,
yeah. And
big
that was the
plastic
bed.
woven mats
And then
laid
we
on
had
the
to
floor. You sleep.
pull out beds on the couch.
Mm-hmm. You
So
maximize your space as a family because, and that's what it was also. Um, you come here, you do what you need to do because it's
mhm.
family, and you basically sponsored to, and petition to bring the family here. When they get on their feet, when they have enough money to like to move on, then that's it, and then here we are.
One thing that I see different from Filipinos and from like other Asian cultures, like the Chinese, Vietnamese, the
Hmm.
Koreans, the Indians, is that whole time they had jobs and they had one mortgage. But why couldn't they all save to start some sort of either business or even like buy houses? Like, so Filipinos, they don't think like that.
Oh,
They
with
don't.
with Filipinos.
Yeah, with Filipinos, they don't think like that. You
Yeah.
know,
So you're saying the difference between Philippines, because I thought I was misunderstanding to where it's like, yeah, just because the Vietnamese, the Koreans, the Chinese, the Japanese, they
they all
sit
work
there,
together,
they all work together
right?
and into one common goal of, okay, we're gonna have a restaurant, or we're gonna have
Yeah,
a laundromat, stuff like that. But
exactly.
what you're
A nail
saying,
shop, a convenience store.
yeah, yeah, there's a very, I don't want to say as a whole, as a general, to generalize it, because there's still quite a few businesses in, like, at least in the Seattle area. I can't speak the same over here with how that went, but there's still a lot of businesses over in the Seattle area that started out like that. I remember in Beacon Hill there was what, a nice kitchen
Hmm.
up there on the strip and everything like that, and I would assume that that would be the case in, and everybody pooling together. But I do understand what you're saying. I grew up in growing up in Seattle. I didn't understand what low income housing was
Hmm.
until, I mean, of course, we weren't. I mean, it was just right down the street, but I'd see like maybe five, six families in one home, and low income housing, of course, is very small.
What
But
area?
you'd have Mercedes Benzes, you've had high
Oh,
end Hondas with
yeah.
nice spoilers and wheels on them. Like, how are they doing it? Because you're sitting there off low income housing. Of course, you're probably paying like $600 a month with that many people living there. As far as adults getting jobs, they're making probably during that time being 5 grand a month, and that's plenty. And like you said, it's for a common goal to get in, maybe a pool hall or a laundromat or something like that. Um, it is it's unfortunate that, I think it's more, I don't want to say unfortunate, but I think our mentality during that time is save, 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 so we can put these kids through a great college so they can be
School.
doctors,
Yeah.
right?
Be
Doctors,
nurses,
dentists, like nurses and everything like
engineers.
that.
Yeah.
And I think that came from just kind of like a smaller type of a mentality in the PI, to where it's like, this is how you make it in the world.
Hmm.
You have to do God's work, with regards to being a doctor, nurse, and everything like
Hmm.
that. And if not,
You got to
lawyer.
get educated.
Yeah, got to be educated because you can't make it anywhere. It's They're not wrong, but it's more of, you almost also have to like kind of peg yourself down in understanding. It's like, we're in a different type of a community here in the U.S. You also have to start taking a look around and say, what is, there's a lot more in success here in the US, other than just these super high end, because there's so much you have to spend off that. I'm not saying that there's not, at this point, great and very successful doctors that made out of that, and from the Filipino community, but at the same time, we all didn't make it as doctors. We
Yeah.
all didn't make it as nurses. Some of us are, just I'm a business analyst by trade, and just out there in the corporate world. I think I think there would still have been value going towards creating a business for ourselves that we can depend on, right? Because, but imagine this also. It's like with with a lot of the Southeast Asian restaurants, the Vietnamese restaurants, the Thai restaurants, it's full family.
Yeah.
That's also your expectation. I think that's some of the toxicity that comes out in the other cultural stuff, right? To where
You
now
have to
they've
work there.
you have to work there. This is kind of your life. This is your inherent business, and this is kind of
You
where
have
you're
to
set
take
at,
over.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a plus minus on each side. I don't know if I would if I myself would want to be in that type of a kind of a set path. You came to the US, we've sacrificed everything, you know. I don't even really know if I want to be here, but we're trying to create a better life. So here's your path, kid.
You know, I don't I don't know if my mom had like toxic traits, right? But I do know that she had a limited type of thinking trait, and that
Mm-hmm.
could be,
Mm-hmm.
you could look at that as toxic.